You're listening to Graphic Novel Explorers Club podcast, an audio book club.
Greetings, explorers. I'm one of your hosts, Johnny, joined by
Dennis,
and our guest host,
Anthony. I had to check that one for a second. Anthony Siino, whatever.
Today we are discussing The Demon by writer and artist Jack Kirby. We hope you've read today's title because all three of us have read the book, so beware, spoilers ahead. Graphic Novel Explorers Club is available wherever fine podcasts are found, including YouTube. So be sure to leave a review and subscribe wherever you listen to the show. All right, listeners, this is our first in-person recording in how long? It's
probably a year.
Since I think Brian.
Yeah.
Brian was the last one we did before the shutdown. That was January or February.
Right.
Or early March of 2020.
Mm-hmm.
So
We're doing it outside. Shirts are off. Pecs are glistening.
Yeah. Pants optional.
Well, Siino for some reason wanted to do shirts versus skins. I don't know why. We're all reviewing the same book, but so yeah, because we're outside in my backyard, you may occasionally hear a siren going by, traffic. Anyways, yeah. So just heads up, there may be some background noises. But Siino, you picked this book out. What was the call to?
Finally, I get to talk about Jack Kirby. So The Demon is an interesting part in Jack Kirby's life. So for a little bit of context, you guys may know Jack Kirby, the god of all comics. He is responsible, or depending on which court you ask, not responsible for the creation of Iron Man, the Hulk, Thor, the Fantastic Four, responsible for the creation of, on DC side, of Darkseid. Oh, he made Dr. Doom, too. I mean, the greatest character, right? He's responsible for, like, all of these incredible developments in the art of comics, in terms of the line work, in terms of the writing, in terms of the creation, in terms of changing the ways that people thought about comics. You know, he even created Captain America back in the days of anthology comics before they became dedicated magazines. All these things. I'm not even getting started here. The Demon is a product of after Stan Lee and the rest of Marvel treated him like garbage, he left because he had these grand ideas for, say, Thor. What would eventually become the Fourth World books, Orion and Darkseid, New Genesis, Apocalypse, all that stuff, the heaven and hell dichotomy. That was all stuff he had planned for Thor.
Is this part of New Gods?
Yeah.
Okay.
So this was all stuff he had planned for Thor, to kill all the Asgardians and to launch the New Gods, right?
I see.
And by the time he got to this point where he realized that he couldn't even trust bringing these ideas out. Long story short, ends up going to DC, even though his name was dirt there, all the people left to allow him to get in there. He starts pitching this new world, all this stuff, you know, starting with the New Gods. It actually started with his work on Superman's pal, Jimmy Olsen, and it kind of led into his own big, broad, Lord of the Rings cross-book thing, like style stories.
Sorry to interrupt, but did DC start him off on something like Jimmy Olsen?
Yeah. They started him off
as like a soft point to see if his books will move here.
Well, a little bit of that, and it kind of depends on who you ask, because Jack Kirby's life has been pretty heavily, because of all the contention around who created what, and of course, you know, we're talking about billions upon billions of dollars at stake here. His whole life is like disputed. But yeah, that was where he got his start to kind of ease into things.
But he already had his rep with Marvel, so it wasn't like he was like this new guy.
And he worked with DC in the past.
Yeah.
So it's not like he was some new guy, and he was the king back then, right? So anyway, all of this kind of like he launches these multiple books, and they keep telling him he's going to be able to edit these stories, that he just has to do the writing and the art up front, and then he'd be able to just like write and edit and supervise them the way he wanted to. And then they'd keep like putting him on new books, and then having him, you know, like, oh, we just need you to do a few more issues kind of stuff. And he was pulling off this amazing stuff with I swear this is building up to The Demon. So he's pulling off all this amazing stuff with his Fourth World stuff, across from Superman to New Gods to Mr. Miracle.
Forever People, my favorite space hippies.
Yeah.
Forever People. Never
amazing. Anyway, so he's doing all this really cool cross-book stuff, telling these big, ambitious stories, and he's getting cut off at every point. Eventually, they cancel New Gods. Don't let him finish the story the way he wants to. Doesn't get to do anything. They keep taking everything from him. And then they go, this is about the 70s, right? Everybody's starting to flinch and starting to change the way they look at the Comics Authority. And they're looking back to the EC Comics stuff, that got the CA put in the first place. And they start going, this is when we have a resurgence of horror comics in the 70s.
Mm-hmm. Occult stuff, Doctor Strange.
Yeah,
Yes.
that's where one of the things in reading this, there's so much occult in this. I was like, this must have really freaked Christians and Catholics out back then, because you had this, you had sort of the occult sort of spilling into Led Zeppelin. There was
there
Hobbit,
was the Lord of the Rings.
Lord of the Rings. Like, there was a lot of occult stuff flaring up.
We really don't see it, of course, until the major satanic panic of the 80s.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Because in the 70s, we were still like not, you see it in shock rock too, the advent of heavy metal and all this stuff. There's all this interesting cultural stuff that's coming to bear here. And especially when you see stuff like politically at the time was kind of leading people to this kind of complete collapse of, especially with like Nixon stuff, the death of the 60s, the end of Camelot, all these sorts of things, and at least political American consciousness. You have all this defeat and despair, like the notion of the moribund, undead country shambling forward into a grim future, right? So it makes all these compelling reasons for this to have culturally been happening at the time. So they look at Jack Kirby, and they go, we just canceled all your shit. Do a horror book now. And Kirby was never that guy. He was in the war, he killed Nazis out there, but he wasn't happy about it.
Right.
You know what I mean? He was not, he was like, he had a real rough upbringing. He was not one to shy from a fight, but he was not like a gore guy. He was a rather positive guy, an ambitious guy. You see it in his writing. He was a big fan of like folklore and plays and these kind of things in a way that really was about the grandiose nature of human experience, right? So him doing The Demon was him being forced into doing something that's like a horror-style comic in a superhero context, and him not wanting to do it all. And he puts out 16 issues of the most kick-ass comics of all time.
I really admire that. At least in the intro, only to differ from the narrative you had spun, it seemed like they maybe promised him, hey, we're going to put New Gods and the Fourth World on hold, which he knew meant it was dead.
Yeah.
Yeah,
effectively.
and there is something to be said for like, I can't remember if it's the late 80s, early 90s. He died in 94. I think it was the late 80s when they allowed him to come back and do a conclusion to the New Gods storyline in The Hunger Dogs, which is a fine conclusion, but they still didn't let him do what he wanted to do, because the New Gods is entirely about like mortal cosmic combat between father and son to stop like basically the overspilling of hell. And he didn't get to kill off everybody he wanted to kill off and all this stuff, right? You can never kill the beloved IP. But yeah, it's a fine point to add on. So to The Demon directly, at this point in Kirby's career, and I'm drawing a lot of my information from supplemental sources, but primarily this book I've read called Jack Kirby, The Epic Life of the King of Comics by Tom, do the Google voice thing, Scioli. And it's a fantastic book that's completely unauthorized, not by the estate, not by DC, not by Marvel. It gives a lot of great context. It's full of really great footnotes. A super fascinating book that I'll be happy to talk about down the line, but just so people know where I'm drawing a lot of my information. So, The Demon. For those of you, though I guess I could have said this before we even got to all this, but if you're not familiar with Jack Kirby, like, you really got to understand, this guy is the king for a reason. From the way he did his line work, from the way he did his posing, for the way that he would compose his pages. Really just start Googling stuff like, say, a great supplement to this, aside from looking at The Demon itself. If you can, pull up stuff like Lord of Light, which is also interesting. If you guys have seen that movie Argo, or, know about history, I don't, and I don't watch movies, so I know nothing. But that fake movie for that operation to get those people out of the Iranian,
right?
To get people out of Iran.
CIA operation.
Jack Kirby was the one who did the
storyboards.
No, not the storyboards, but like the concept art.
Really?
And the concept art is some of the most badass stuff I've ever seen.
This guy can literally pull shit out of a brick. It's amazing. Like when I was reading the little intro, because I had never followed up and understood the backstory of how this came together. But literally, he came up with this concept, like, what was it, over dinner? And it's amazing. Like Siino was talking about, I mean, this is stuff that he wasn't enthused about. This wasn't his pet project, but they told him, you got to do this. but he still put out fucking quality material. Like most of the time when a band is required by the label to put out an album or something, they'll put out some weird ass concept shit that they don't even think is great. But
yeah,
this
Marvin Gaye has a notoriously bad album because it was just to pay off his wife.
Exactly.
His divorce.
But this stuff was like A+ material. People would be lucky to be able to create something like this. Yeah. So it's amazing. Sorry, Siino.
No, it's totally fine.
Kind of going back to what you were saying about like him dying in 94, it's like, it's a shame like the Image Comics thing didn't happen a decade earlier. Because imagine if he had been given free reign as a creative,
absolutely,
the things that he could have done, you know.
Well, I was going to just say, I often tell Johnny, I'm a medium level fan of comic books. I'm not a super level fan. I would qualify you as super level, like the history of the artists and stuff like that. I happen to know, some of the backstory, some more obscure characters, but I don't delve deep into it. This really made me want to delve deep because the way they talked about how they kept promising him things, canceling his books and stuff like that. It was a really I was amazed he put out such good material because they really treated him badly. And I'm very interested in seeing the history of comics. Like you talked about, fuck Stan Lee. I would say a lot of people would say that, he became the face or whatever of Marvel, but there's a whole history. I mean, we know from looking at, Superman, Superboy, and Batman, there's a very shady history about who owned the rights of creating. And I honestly haven't delved much into it, and I definitely want to now. Just reading how he came about creating this character.
I think Stan Lee got on like our later generations towards the end of his career, like 70s and 80s.
Well, he was the voice on the cartoon.
Through the cartoons, right. I was going to say,
Spider-Man is amazing.
He was
friends.
doing the same thing all the way back. He was a brilliant provocateur. He was a brilliant
showman,
all that stuff. Yeah, that actually Kirby famously parodies in Mr. Miracle. Funky Flashman. And he went throughout his whole career, he went back and forth between Marvel and DC and had to talk to Stan and be like, yeah, that was you. Stan was unhappy and all this stuff because Kirby was always throwing jabs at stuff in his own books, at characters in his life.
Nice.
So to get further into the meat of the Demon itself, because I could talk this context all day, but hopefully it's not too boring. I really want to point out, so the setup of the book, it opens with one of the most beautiful pages. Again, it's only a 16-issue run, and the Demon himself, Etrigan, shows up throughout all of DC important comic history.
Yeah, we were talking about this before we even started recording. We were like, hey, what book do you want to read? And you had said the Demon, and when I saw the image of him, I was like, I remember this character popping up, I believe, in Batman, the animated series, JLU. There was a couple different cartoon iterations in the 90s, I think, and the early aughts. So I was like, oh, I don't know this character, but I recognize him. And then recently watching Invincible cartoon on Amazon, I was like, the Demon character in that's this...
Played by Clancy Brown.
Yeah.
The God.
I was like, oh, this is a mashup of Hellboy and the Demon, this character, this paranormal investigator in Invincible. It's like they just... that whole comic book is lifting character types and arcs and putting them in Invincible. But I was just like, oh, this is their homage to Jack Kirby's The Demon.
Yeah. And so the Demon himself shows up in, Alan Moore's Swamp Thing. And he shows up in Neil Gaiman's Sandman and all this stuff. And where he goes later as a character is fascinating. All the ways different writers deploy him. But as Kirby presents him, and actually going back to context a little bit, the Demon's design with his yellow face and red eyes and the little tiny horns and the webbed winged ears. Yeah. It's actually a ripoff. At this point in Kirby's life, everybody had ripped him off, right? So he was like, I'm going to do it myself this time. So it's actually his design in the face is ripped off directly from an old Prince Valiant comic where Prince Valiant wears this I don't remember what it is, a skin or something, over his head.
Mm-hmm. I actually looked that up, and it's amazing. Spot on, full on, not even subtly. No. It's that's the Demon. Off. I think that the ears are actually its feet, the goose's feet. Yeah. Here, and it's just, it's a full on ripoff, which just proves the point. Sometimes, everyone copies each other to some degree.
Well, and say what you will about it, but Kirby had earned it.
Yeah, for sure.
My favorite thing, and Kirby gets to it with reckless abandon in this first issue. Kirby writes in a I like to put it as that Kirby is very much a modern Shakespeare, in that if you contextualize Shakespeare, we think of him as high-minded. It comes across as high-minded, but it was the low art of the day.
Right.
It was all wordplay, and it was all like a
soap
particular
operas and,
a particular kind of vaudeville
rom-coms.
almost.
Yeah.
And Jack Kirby's writing is full of this, where if you've never like just read a Jack Kirby book, it crackles. Both the famous Kirby crackle, the little spheres,
the bubbles, the plasma spheres, right?
That he does everywhere. But the way he does annoyance in comics right now is that everything's like digitally gradient shaded.
Yeah, for sure.
I'm a sucker for flat colors, like we talked about on the Humans, and for ink shading, for black ink shading. And Kirby, like you could see his images, like the last Silver Surfer stories he did, or in all of his DC work, just how inventive his line work is to convey depth and shading. But his writing itself is so vivid. So resetting again. So the context is where we see this beautiful splash page where Kirby's done this light baby blue border, and it's Merlin from the window of a besieged Camelot, holding this book. And
like magical smoke spilling through.
Yeah, the crackle and large effect, this beautiful font, and the castle is being besieged by Morgaine le Fey, and it's the last day of Camelot, and you turn the page, and it's a beautiful splash page, this Boschian massive combat, all of these figures flying back and forth, these beautiful designs that Kirby would just shit out, just like, bum, bum, bum. Oh, the lowest of the low characters who never show up again get these beautiful, intricate costumes. Giant battle.
Yeah, that sorry to interrupt.
No,
that
please.
was the thing in this the introduction to the demon, and it's almost a throwaway story, is the attention to detail and all these like warriors that don't even really culminate in a battle or anything.
It's just there.
He pulls Merlin pulls the demon out into our plane of existence and then blows up Camelot.
And that's it.
And that's it. And then, sorry.
So, no, it's great context. So, and that's the thing. The demon's whole setup is that he's tied to this human, Jason Blood. And Etrigan is bound by Merlin himself and answers only to Merlin and his own desires. And he's, from hell. He's a demon. He's not like exactly a good person. And so the book starts off with Jason Blood in modern times, having lived for 2,000 years. And at this point, he's pretty just like unhappy that there's a demon on him. So after we get through this big battle where Merlin collapses Camelot to prevent Morgaine le Fey from getting the book and all this stuff, we see Jason Blood talking with this old sorcerer, trying to like figure out how to get this demon out of him. And immediately the sorcerer returns, and it leads to like the sorcerer animates this beautiful suit of armor in all these technical, like these bright, vibrant colors of purple and red and orange. And they're dueling to the death. And as they're dueling, the sorcerer and Jason Blood are having this amazing conversation. It's one of my... This little exchange, I'm going to read it because it's one of my... It's so Jack Kirby. If you want to understand Jack Kirby, it's right here. And the first line is the sorcerer, and then it turns to Jason Blood. Sorcerers answer to no one. They're a purpose and power unto themselves. And Jason Blood replies... Then let the flame be my reply. Let the fires of primal inferno give power to this burning brand and still the raging winds that shriek between the worlds. And then he jabs a flaming stick into the suit of armor's face. Fucking perfect.
Yeah. That introduction was amazing, and it matches the intensity of it.
And overall, I really enjoy the structure of every issue where it very fit the time period where like a Twilight Zone Star Trek episode. You start with a teaser, you have the meat, and then you have kind of a preview of the next story. Next time, same bat channel kind of thing. Yeah. I loved how that was structured.
Yeah, and it's done. One of my big beefs with comics, I'm sure I've talked about it on here before, particularly with the Humans. I hate most writing produced in the last 20 years. The Joss Whedonification of the world has cheapened everything. The lack of sincerity, the need to always punctuate something with a self-deprecating joke or something to prove that you're aware of the context and that you can step between these metatextual, really like metatextual, but as text.
It's also not giving the benefit of the audience being smart enough to pick up on things.
Right.
There's a great book that issue 5 just came out called Maniac of New York. Have you guys heard of this? It's an Aftershock book. It does a great job of doing what the Humans and Jack Kirby and
Wait, the energy drink is getting into comic books?
Wait, what are you talking about? The Humans?
No, Aftershock.
Oh, Aftershock.
The-
Is there an energy drink called Aftershock?
I know there's a.
You're thinking of the fest around
Yeah, that's what
town,
I'm thinking of.
sponsored by Monster. But
Come
that
on.
was a hell of a
Monster.
paranoid association.
Way to go, old man.
Man, you threaded that needle about 3
You said it with a lot of confidence, so
You just threw that javelin right through.
Yeah,
Armor piercing.
not intending to hit anything.
So Maniac of New York, its setup is like this. It's Times Square, 2016, New Year's. And this, not Jason Voorhees shows up and kills a few hundred people. And then it time skips to today. And nobody's dealt with him. So the world has just adjusted to his presence. And there's a bit where but the premise is completely serious. It's a serious drama about a detective who gets into the anti-Harry the Maniac police squad and realizes that everybody's like, well, what do you think we're gonna do? And she's like a true believer, and she's like, no, we're gonna get this guy. And it's all serious, but the book does a great job of not, because he just shows up and kills a bunch of people, right? And that's just how the world just moves on. And the book does a nice way of being releasing that tension without saying this is a dumb premise.
right.
Right. So to return to Kirby, that's what I love about it, because this is a man who really believes in giving everything, with every stroke of the pen, with everything he writes. He's just a master of the craft. And if it all boils down to, he puts these fairly beautiful broad strokes into things. But even for something like The Demon, there's a reason people like Alan Moore, who take literature seriously and seek to imbue comics with literature, there's a reason they love Jack Kirby. And it's not just of his work, not just his work ethic or whatever, right? And it's so deeply ingrained in this book in which our main character, a demon from hell, fights a character named Baron von Evilstein.
Right.
You know what I mean?
Well, I mean, he fights the Wolfman, he fights Frankenstein, he fights these corny monsters, but he makes it his own. And God, you just gotta love his character designs too.
Yeah.
I mean, it could be some throwaway demon or whatever, and I don't know. There's just something about it.
There's nothing that isn't given attention to detail.
It could be a freaking pipe, and the way he shades it or colors it is just off the charts amazing. A mask, someone's face, it doesn't matter.
And yeah, even when people have a tendency to disparage stuff that works in broad strokes. They're one of the little Monster of the Week issues in here. They're all Monster of the Week issues, but one of them is about a Phantom of the Opera wannabe, right? With the full mask off reveal and everything. And it's people love to disparage that stuff, but it works.
Yeah.
That's the thing people keep forgetting, that we go to the movies, we read the comic book because we've already bought the ticket, so to speak. We understand that it's not real. We understand that, there's something primal. And that's the thing about...
Well, I was going to say, so there are people who think this is real. So I was looking into demonology and stuff like that.
Hell yeah.
Because Jason Blood, the demon's counterpart or who he's anchored to, is a demonologist. So I was like, is that even a thing? Is demonology a thing?
Oh, hell
It
yes.
is and it isn't. So I couldn't find anything specific about a school or any university or college that actually has a demonology program or some sort of occult studies. But you can enroll for $40 for a course at paralearning.com. It's all about paranormal activity and learning. I also couldn't find any specific salary ranges about demonology, or if you're a demonologist.
Do you have to learn it through a Ouija board?
So
Basically, and looking into it, a lot of it is self-taught. You have to seek out these books. You maybe have a mentor, which brings me to the Delaware Valley Demonology Research. That's the name of it. There's not clinic or school or anything. And I'll have a link to that in the website for this too. It's led by Kevin Mears, who is a described demonologist and paranormal investigator. He has a YouTube channel under Paranormal Encyclopedia. It's definitely worth checking out.
Absolutely. I had a minor demonology phase.
Oh, did you really?
Well, because the problem is there are some good books that have kind of brought this into the modern age in an accessible way, but most of the stuff is like aggregate stuff behind the doors of the church or whatever. But that was where I discovered, if anybody's ever wondered where my Twitter handle, Titivulus, comes from, that is a lesser imp whose job was to, or a lesser demon, I guess, I don't know. He was the patron demon of scribes.
Nice.
And anytime, when all the Bibles were written by hand, if you put an error in, Titivulus was there to grab it and put it in his bag so that it could be weighed against your soul on Judgment Day. So I took that on when I was an editor.
Anyways, getting back to Kevin Mears, if you go and check out his YouTube channel under Paranormal Encyclopedia, which goes all the way back to 2015, his most recent episode as of this episode going up was about 3-4 months ago. But he's got topics or episodes titled like Nazis in the Cult. He's got that twice. Dracula.
There's a lot to cover there.
Dracula. The Wrath of Khan, and not Khan from Star Trek, just C-O-N. And then one titled 12 p.m. Kevin Mears Magic and Mentalism.
All right, this is what I'm doing later tonight.
There's lots of heavy nose breathing into this.
Oh, yes. This is exactly what I want.
But yeah, definitely go check it out. Go check out his website. It's a classic before WordPress and
this actually kind of ties into the demon, back to this book. Because when I was in that demonology phase, that was how I learned that Merlin is supposedly a Cambion.
What's that? I don't know what a Cambion is.
The half-human spawn of a succubus. Like through a human relation. Anyway.
I see.
You like that tie back there?
Yeah, I
back
like
to
it.
the book.
Maybe that's a future episode for Kevin.
But one thing I really wanted to say about this book, because I keep forgetting to say it, and I gotta say it now. There's something about, I don't know if you guys felt this, but I have to be careful reading Jack Kirby. Because when I read Kirby, it overloads me. All the way it's written, the way the art is so dynamic, the way the colors just pop. Now, of course, we're talking about the collected edition of the entire run that DC put out in 2018? They were doing 2017, which restored some lost pages. Obviously, they update the colors because this is a
it does it. You could tell it's probably been digitally colored,
but they do a respectful job.
Yeah, because things are way too vibrant, even if they somehow got their hands on his old.
And I could understand people being mad about that. I'm not. I think it kicks ass. I think it looks really good.
Yeah, you could tell it was lovingly done.
Yeah, and I'm. Come talk to me about Absolute Swamp Thing, what they've been doing with the Absolute line in general. I am not this guy normally. But
And if you want to talk to Siino about this, he's at Big Brothers Comics.
Big Brother Comics. That's right. Sacramento, downtown.
He will 100% talk you into buying things that you don't want to buy.
Oh, yeah. Oh, no, that you do. Be careful now.
Yeah, that's true. You didn't know you wanted to buy.
I'm very proud of my work over there. Just recently, I was able to sell. A couple told me I saw them in the Fantagraphics books, and I came over. I was like, oh, this is good. They have taste. I'm in. And so they told me they had 2 people they were looking to buy birthday presents for. And in about 45 seconds, I had the perfect books given to them. Very good at what I do. Come over. Talk to me.
Let me just say that that's a testament to an in-person store. We talk about things going digital. This is an off-tangent thing. But that is the touch that you really do lose, that I miss about record stores.
Yeah.
That I love about comic shops is that you get to talk to someone like Siino, and really they're smarter than any AI could ever be for recommending some kind of program or book or whatever.
Anything like that, it's always surface level.
Right.
Whereas, you go into a comic book shop.
Keywords.
Exactly. Or it's an algorithm that says, oh, you may like this, I don't know. Whereas, the great thing about record stores and comic book shops and going in person is there are people in there, even if they're not employees, they might just be in there browsing and they see you pick something up off the shelf and go, oh, that's how I got Fables. That's how I got into Fables, is I went to Big Brothers, and Kenny, I was looking for something, and he's like, what do you want to read? I was like, I don't know, man. I'm just kind of, there's nothing interesting right now. And this was, Fables was maybe in their 7th trade book, 8th trade book, somewhere in there. So, this was like pretty early in the run. And he's like, I got a book for you. Fables. And I was instantly hooked.
Yeah.
Instantly hooked.
And that's the thing. Like, I'm a big believer over there that, you know, it's our job to give people, you know, like comic books, like all art, you know, there's nothing wrong with enjoying what's right there at the surface or just coming in and grabbing one thing and never interacting with it the rest of your life. But, you know, something your guys' podcast is a testament to, there's something here. Mm-hmm. And when you come into a place like Big Brother, like, I'm a big believer that you're here to learn something. And it's not that I'm going to teach it to you. It's that I'm going to, you know, our job is to put you in connection with what you like and continue to refine and enhance your relationship with literature or with, you know, whether it be the board games or the Magic the Gathering stuff. Perfect ad for Big Brother. I'm selling it right now. You know, like there is always something that you're picking up about yourself and about the world around you with this stuff, with good critique or even with just simple enjoyment, right? And again, like that's why the Demon will always be so important to me. And unfortunately, we can't get the Demon back because Lunar, who took over distribution for DC, doesn't have a backstock yet. So it's like it's out there. We just can't get it, which makes me want to die. But so don't come to Big Brother for the Demon, I guess. Hopefully this will be fixed just by the time this comes out. Yeah. Come in, hassle me. I'll put you on the list, and 10 years later, we'll get you the book. Anyway, the point is, you know, the Demon is really such a great example without having, because one of the big problems with comics, right, is like, even when you're reading a one-shot of something, like, say, Batman, you're looking at almost a century of history here. And everything's making jokes about something or, like, tying into something and all this
self-referential,
like
the snake eating itself thing.
I've been recommending people comic books for years, and I still have no idea what to say when somebody says, give me a good Batman book. And that's not just because there's never been a good Batman book, but, you like that one?
They're far and few between.
Yeah, so it's just because, like, well, what do you like?
Right.
You know, there's so many things. And so, like, the Demon, in my mind, is a great example of something that you can just pass to somebody.
Absolutely.
You know, anybody who's enthusiastic, anybody who has, like, the Demon crackles with life.
Especially a collected series like this. I mean, I know some people like the monthlies, but something like this where you're like, oh, you want to read something over the course of a week, here you go.
Yeah, and it's like, you know, maybe I'd rather if somebody's like, oh, I want to get into comics seriously, then maybe I'd hit them with New Gods first. Mm-hmm. Something that has like a more driving, straightforward narrative, something that really builds on itself. But the Demon is great to just pass off to like anybody, even to children. You can see what I think about what children should be reading. But
no, I agree. I think like it's not,
because it's life affirming.
Yeah,
like I know absolutely. That's a dumb thing to say about media, but because you know it's like just go outside, you want to affirm life. But it's really, for being a horror book, it's really about just like I find it difficult to put into words.
Yeah, it's definitely not a horror book where it ends with, you know, horror movies always end with this cliffhanger that's like, guess what, the bad guy kind of won, really, and that's not what this ends on. No, this is a book about like triumph, repeated triumph, and where it gets horrific is just in the levels of like, I shouldn't say violence, but in like the chaos of it. It's more about, if you could call it a horror book at all, it's about the horror of primal force. Like one of my favorite, there are multiple favorite parts in this book, like I don't think you got to it where you read, Johnny, but there's this beautiful part near the end where Etrigan emerges from a sewer and a cop's just like, what the hell is this? And he like draws the gun on Etrigan, like, stop. And Etrigan just starts marching at him and like speaking in this Shakespearean horror speak as he lights himself on fire, just marching down this cop. And you know, other moments, like there's a bit where, so Etrigan is brought forth from Jason Blood by reciting a poem, and then the transformation takes place, right?
Klaatu Varakta Niktu.
Yeah, something like that. A little bit of a cough in there. And there's a scene where one of Jason Blood's allies is in like trouble, and he says the poem, and Etrigan defeats the foe, and then just starts kind of like rampaging around, and the guy's like, wait, you're going too far. And the Demon, like the panel is just perfect, just this big head turn. and starts marching. It's like, did you not summon me? Is this not what you wanted? You know, like, that's as horrific as it gets, that it's about the demon as primal force, as the rising and the crashing of a cresting tide.
Yeah.
But beyond that, it's about, like, even a force from hell being directed toward protection and defense of what's important. And it really shines through in, so people who've read maybe some other significant DC books are familiar with Etrigan the Rhymer, because later, you know, established by Alan Moore, I think, I could be wrong on that, Etrigan is put into the higher ranks of hell. And once you go up in the ranks of hell, you become a rhymer. And the rhymer demons all speak in verse.
Right.
And again,
like Roadblock from G.I. Joe. He must have been an upper level demon.
Yeah, like oh god, I already stubbed the riff. Dolomite.
Right.
Yeah.
Like Dolomite.
So Dolomite
is one of the lieutenants of Satan.
What I do like is that the cartoon series, going back to what you said, Johnny, animated series, later on in the animated series, they pull up the story of, Klarion, the Witch Boy.
The Witch Boy.
They take him, the whole thing where Etrigan is put under Morgaine le Fey's spell by branding, and they also, I believe in that one or later ones, he does rhyme. So like you're talking about. So they kind of mesh all those different stories together.
And it leads, like, I can't be on a comic podcast without talking about Swamp Thing, my love and joy. But that's pretty early. I think it's in the first of the 6 trades, the way they currently have it out. Etrigan's first whole arc in Swamp Thing is tied to, once again, to Kirby. One of the best issues in this book is the Fear Monster. This little white furry monkey-like thing that once it gets close to you, it starts feeding on your fears, and it manifests as what you're afraid of, or whatever, right? Little one-off, one-and-done thing, never brought up again. But Alan Moore brings it back in Swamp Thing, and this little fear monster's feeding at an orphanage. It's like Bubba Hotep, right? Just like having a grand old time. And it leads to like one of my favorite 2-panel combinations in all of comic history when Etrigan going... And actually, Alan Moore does a great job of getting at Etrigan. Etrigan being a character who does not care. Like, he's a force of passion, but if it's like right to the side of what he cares about, it's nope, doesn't matter. So like in Alan Moore's run where Etrigan shows up, he doesn't give a shit about anybody in this orphanage. And like as somebody's kind of like, he's climbing on this rooftop about to bust into this orphanage, and he rhymes to himself, "Oh, to hear the tales they tell, you'd think not a single innocent child was in hell." And then he rips off this panel of like the sunroof of this orphanage cackling. It's the best. And like that's kind of like a little darker, if you will, take on what like the energy of this book is.
For sure.
Like every time I'm sorry, I'm just going off.
Wait, we knew what we were getting into when we invited you on the show. So.
I appreciate that. I try to be mindful anyway, but it's a mistake.
That's why we can only have you on once a year.
Yeah, that's right.
It's too intense.
And then we just break up the episode into 10 parts, and we're done for the year.
Yeah, Dennis and I have to go on vacation for like a month and just like.
I mean, that's what the Friendship Pod had to do. They had to break me into a 2-parter. They started asking me about journalism, and I went, well, and 2 hours later,
they both like, oh, what? Rip Van Winkle.
We were all shaking. But like, even when I hold this book, it's like totemic. Like, I feel it in my hand, pulsing something. It's radioactive. So anyway.
No, for sure. Anything Kirby does is, and really DC owes him so much. I mean, when you talk about the New Gods, you talk about the Forever People, the whole Fourth World, I mean, they mine that constantly. You talk about them mining Watchmen now, they mine Darkseid and all of that stuff to death. Brother Eye and OMAC, all that stuff. They will strip it, take it apart, make it however they want their own to bolster up their current
But that just speaks to like his ability to write and create characters outside of illustrating. The fact that there's that much depth where something could be malleable, it's malleable, and it's a new writer like Alan Moore or someone who doesn't have those writing talents can take it and put it through their press, their mind press, and spit out something that's, just like building upon what he did.
Just look at the Tom King Mr. Miracle, right? I've got very mixed feelings about that book. I ultimately think it's like a very worthy read and so on and so forth. Not the point. But what he does with Mr. Miracle's character, what he does with Granny Goodness, like just look at a character like Granny Goodness. for any of you who aren't familiar, the whole character of Mr. Miracle from Tom Kirby's run was that Mr. Miracle was one of the children enslaved in the X-Pits of Apocalypse, run by Granny Goodness, who is the slave driver who is sculpting these children into super soldiers, right? Children super soldiers to become parademons and stuff. And, like, that's absurdly dark.
Mm-hmm.
And the entire thing about Mr. Miracle is, like, him and Big Bart are the only ones who ever escape Granny Goodness. And so when he gets to Earth, like, uses a boom tube and a mother box to get all the way to Earth, and when he gets there, he takes on the name for himself, scot-free. And then comes upon Mr. Miracle, who is this great escape artist who dies, and he takes on the mantle, so on and so forth, right? With that, Kirby doesn't, like, linger in the sadness. He doesn't sit there and go like, oh, Scot-Free is such a broken character. He doesn't, like, linger on the cruelty of Granny Goodness. He instead just flatly puts it, has some big broad strokes, some bombastic moments. Every panel with Granny Goodness is just banger, right? Incredible character, just like this grandmother who's just like putting gunpowder in your food.
And her Furies, oh my gosh.
And the female Furies are so, oh my god, I love them. Anyway, so, but all Jack Kirby does, like, he sets this stuff up so it can continually be about his good characters transcending themselves. You know, struggling through what they struggle through, but not being self-important about it.
Right.
Not being, you know, it's those beautiful, classical, broad strokes that later get strip-mined or lovingly brought back into things like Alan Moore, Gaiman, King. They do a good job of acknowledging these deeper things and choosing to focus on it. And that's really the power of Jack Kirby. Well, one of the many great powers of him was that he was so intensely focused on being his own thing. Famously, so many greats of today and of generations past looked up to him, and they were always trying to copy his style. And they'd come to him and say, like, you taught me everything. What do I do? And he'd always say, do your own thing. That's the only thing I can tell you. Do your own thing. And, you know, what? Lo and behold, it happened, right? But even then, people who had to follow in his footsteps, there was so much to mine. And it's almost like there's a part of me, this very, you could call it cruel part of me, or perhaps even realistic. I'm not a believer in fate or in fortune or anybody deserving anything or whatever. What happens, happens. You can describe it, but what happens, happens. And there's a part of me that says none of what happened to Jack Kirby should have happened. Mm-hmm. But look at what he did through it all.
Yeah, in spite of it.
Right?
Yeah.
And I would love to think that if he got a chance to really do what he wanted to do, that it would have been astounding.
Right.
And I hate that his life was compromised and perhaps even wasted by people who just wanted his money.
Right.
Wanted his soul, really. I think we've all had some experience in working in what you care about and realizing that it's just a handle for you to be consumed and thrown away. Right? All the same, like, we did get the demon.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, Jack Kirby is like literally the giving tree. I mean, and I don't think DC or Marvel would even be what they are without his genesis of ideas.
Absolutely not.
And, you know, I definitely feel like he, like you said, Siino, had a very positive spin on things. When you talk about Darkseid and New Apocalypse, but then on the flip side, you have the Forever People who are really, like, how would the Forever People be created today? They're hippies. Like, no kidding. They're full-on hippies. And they have such a positive message in fighting Apocalypse and Darkseid, which DC loves to just show Apocalypse, but they forget the Forever People and all those... New Genesis.
The source.
Yeah.
Yeah.
All right, well, I guess you wouldn't recommend the book.
Absolutely not. And are we at the end? I've still got another hour and a half here. Come on.
We're at the end here, man. I'm sorry.
We don't have any more tape.
Yeah, the reel's
okay.
almost
I brought
out.
another recorder. We'll keep going.
No. Yeah, I never even thought to read something like this, so I've got to finish it. I only made it about halfway through. So
yeah, and please read New Gods. Read New Gods.
Absolutely.
As a
Mr.
companion
Miracle.
piece to this, or just
read New Gods and Mr. Miracle. Those are companion pieces. But if you like this, you'll love that. You know?
And yeah, if you're a fan of anything that DC's doing today, I mean, like I said, they mine that fourth world to death. I mean, Darkseid, all of that stuff, the mother boxes that you probably saw in Justice League, the movie, all that stuff originated with Kirby. And his stuff
was done much better by Kirby.
Oh yeah, and he was Game of Thronesing it way before Game of Thrones was doing it. I mean, you're talking switching, exchanging suns to try to create peace between two warring factions. I mean, it was next level, like, Shakespearean stuff.
I think so often of that. Steppenwolf.
Yeah.
Speaking of that movie, one of my favorite Jack Kirby lines of all time. In New Gods, Steppenwolf dies, and then there's like a battle scene, and Steppenwolf is miraculously back, and somebody questions him on this, and the panel is him like full back, riding this giant tiger, the wind swooping through his hair, and his only reply is, I quote, "The spirit of slaughter ever seeks the foe."
Like, where the fuck did he get this
Incredible.
shit? Yeah.
I want to say that to somebody after I've been killed and brought back.
Well, if you get back into journalism,
yeah,
at your first day in the office, you can say that.
Thank you. That's never going to happen.
If people want to follow you, where can they do that, Siino?
I don't remember if my account is locked or not. If it is, well, tough nuts.
If not, just come down to Big Brothers.
Big
Comics
Brother.
in Sacramento.
You can come and ask for Anthony, and when I
write his name on a rock and throw it through the window. That's what I usually do.
That's the smart thing to do. And you can follow me, I guess, on Twitter. If I haven't locked it down, it's at Blart of War. Like Art of War, but I'm all cop.
And where can people follow the podcast there? Dennis?
On Insta and Twitter, at GN Explorers Club.
Cool. Well, thanks, Siino. Appreciate it. It's always a pleasure having you on the podcast.
It's always a pleasure to have you guys look at me tapping your watches as I'm yelling about comics.
I fall asleep most of the time, so I'm not tapping my watch.
Siino and I, Dennis and I, just kind of side-eyeing each other like, when should we wrap this up?
The microphone was cut off minutes ago.
We didn't even want to review the demon. We're reviewing something else. How do we tell him that? All right, well, we're going to talk about Archie now.
All right.
You guys should have had me on for 3 Jokers.
Oh, God.
Oh, no.
You'd have to censor that whole thing.
Yeah.
I like the art a lot. I just hate the story.
We'll do it.
Okay, yeah, another one. Goodbye, friends.
Bye.